You go to school, you go to college, you get your degree, and then the world opens up to you, right? That's not true.
So you are testing election software. If Trump calls you and asks you, hey, can you leave a security bug for us so we could vote some extra?
Okay, I think I could do this. I try to break things.
All right, guys, this time I'm not going to be talking about this video on my own. I'm going to be talking about the video with the actual guy, the guy himself, Arthur, the election system software tester, if we could introduce you that way, the king of software election testing.
I guess if you want to call it that, yeah.
And my name is Sergey Krivchenko. I am the owner and a main mentor at Codemify IT School, a school that helps people to find a job just like this guy. So today we're going to interview him. We're going to learn about his journey, since he is a very interesting person. He is the American Armenian who was born in Armenia and moved. Tell us the story.
So basically, my parents, there was a war going on in the 90s there. My mom didn't want us to kind of go fight in the war. It was very unstable. She thought when we get older, it'd be a problem. So basically, she was a dentist in that country. So Kaplan had this program where they wanted kind of professionals to come to America, and then you just have to get your license here. So she ended up getting her license here. I came with her. I was like 2 years old, and I kind of lived here ever since. Yeah. Which is funny because I didn't actually become a citizen until I was like 20 years old. So I lived a long time with like a green card, but then, as you can tell, as you said when we met, you're like, I'm so Cal through and through.
So true. So you're not a Cal guy, you're the
Glendale guy. I think there's a distinction to be made there. If you know Armenians, you know the difference.
So is it true that there are more Armenians in Glendale than in Armenia?
I don't know exactly if there's more now, but it's definitely like the biggest diaspora. And I think with the recent war that's happened there, more people have come. So it's just like, Glendale's Glendale. It's like, so everywhere you go, it's like everybody looks like like this guy, like this. Maybe not the mustache, but you get the idea. Yeah.
Nice. That's amazing. All right. Can you tell us your story? Because I remember when you joined our school, I saw pretty much myself in him because he was well prepared. He knew a lot of stuff as soon as he joined the course. And that was me 10 years ago when I joined the course in Silicon Valley. I spent a half a year before I joined the course in order not to be the dumbest one in the class. And as soon as he joined us, I was like, whoa, this guy.
Yeah, I think for me, because, I've done college, I did all that stuff, but I did a completely different degree. I did econ. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, just kind of like the subject, kind of fell into it. But then you come out with an econ degree, and I'm like, okay, what do I want to do with my life? The jobs are not really interesting. I'm not really into it. So I was kind of looking around, what am I going to find? And I actually had a friend who was kind of like doing QA or something like that. I didn't even know it existed. And then he showed me, and he also showed me his paycheck. And I was like, I think I could do this, because I think like naturally I was thinking I'd go into business or something like that. But I think if I look further back, and I think this is a good way to, all the prospective students to find out if this might be good for you, is like, if you kind of have like problem solving, like, you're kind of like, I wouldn't say an engineer, but engineer mindset. Like you want to fix problems. Problems happen and you're able to break them down. So I think that's kind of what kind of put me on the path to like, I'd go on like Udemy, other courses, other things like that to try to get familiar with stuff. And I think that paid dividends in the class itself.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, you're used to it and it's not as foreign. And then when someone's telling you, and then you can actually ask more targeted questions.
Yep.
And you can get more specific. And that, so if you're going to take the class, I would suggest do as much learning as you can beforehand. It's only going to help you out even more.
Yeah. 100% agree. Yeah, as I said, I spent half a year because as soon as I've heard that there was a school in Silicon Valley and people would study there for 3 to 5 months and then they would get a job and make a lot of money. My first job was 70 or 80K. That was back in 2014. I was like, whoa, coming from the Farmboy, making $15 an hour, and now I'm making like $35 an hour. Like, what is going on here? Can people legally make that much money?
Yeah. It's funny too. It's like when I started working and after the program and I got the job, it was almost like disbelief. I was like, they're paying me this much to do this. And it's like, I'm doing it well, granted.
Yeah.
But it's like the jobs I've had in the past when I was younger too, when I was making less money, were so much worse, in every manner. And I'm just like, I feel like the higher the pay, almost the better the job, the more respect. And you're like surrounded by people. That's the beauty. You're surrounded by people who want to be there.
Yeah.
And everyone has this common goal and they're trying to help each other out. There's like, oh no, he did this, but I did this. None of that. It's like, we just trying to get this done. And people kind of identify that you're part of the team and you're almost like kind of rewarded for that.
Yep, and that's one of the best parts. When I went to school back in my days, that was the thing that actually triggered me, because I was working on a farm. I've learned everything I could possibly learn on a farm. I became the best version of myself at the farm. And the next step would be just open up my own farm. And my farmer actually offered me that when I told him that I'm moving to Silicon Valley. He's like, why don't you just stick with us? I'll help you to get the land. I'll give you my tractors for free.
Oh, wow.
We can do business together.
So you had a sweet deal there.
Oh, yeah. Very sweet deal.
You're like, as far as farmer deal go, that's like entry level. That's awesome, right?
Yeah. I would be multimillionaire now.
I bet there's some people that thought you were crazy.
They were. But they're still on the farm.
They're like, we're here in Santa Monica.
But I love it. Honestly, I lived in North Dakota for a long time, but this is Cali. This is Los Angeles. It's a different life. And either way, I just wanted to develop myself. I wanted to become a better version of myself. Yeah. And that's what we were talking about. As soon as I saw people like me, like you, Arthur, on a screen on a YouTube, just like you guys are watching us now, I was like, I want to be like those guys. I want to be a cool kid going to a cool school in Silicon Valley or in Los Angeles. Yeah. I want to be with the cool kids like myself who are learning and who want to improve their lives. Yeah. Because on a farm, things are awesome. I love the farm, literally. But still, people are day by day, you're doing the same job. It's a slow development. And, it's a farm life. It's kind of slow, but I feel like I'm too fast to be slow. That's what I feel like.
Yeah. And I think, too, it's like a lot of the people that I think did really well, there's like this internal kind of drive. There's something driving you where you're like, I want more. This isn't enough. Not in like a bad way. You know what I mean? But you feel like you could, even now I have my job. I was telling you earlier, I was like, I feel like I could be doing more. Exactly. I was like, I'm trying to look like, I remember one time you mentioned like some people were working 2 jobs. Yep. I was like, maybe not that, but maybe like a part-time job on the weekends or something like that, But it's like that drive that you want to do more and you're capable of more, Because it's so easy. And I think about it too. It's like you only got so many years in your life. And like, especially now, it's kind of like your prime years to learn and push yourself and stuff. And like, I mean, if you take like, who's that said, if you take 5 years and really push yourself, it's like Jordan Peterson, 5 years towards your goals, you won't imagine how far you'll get, And it's like, I feel like if you have that drive, that like kind of like unsatisfied with the way things are, like a class is like the way to go. And the thing too is like, you learn so much in 3 to 5 months. Like, I feel like I was like teleported, you know what I mean?
Exactly. You're a different person by the end of the course. That's what I usually tell our students when they finish the course. Actually, a week ago, we finished the group number 13. Yeah. And usually the last words that I say, guys, now take a look at the video from our first webinar 5 months ago. Take a look who you were, what questions you've been asking.
Do you recognize that person?
Exactly. Who are they?
Yeah.
Now you're completely different people.
I'll be honest, like that's what I hated about college, in the sense that I spent 4 years there and I look back. The funny thing was, one time I thought I had to take a class and I had forgotten that I'd even taken the class, a class I'd been sitting in for 6 months. And I was like, no, I didn't take a nutrition class. And they said, and then it came back to me like a week later. And I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm spending time and I'm not learning anything. Whereas like here, it's like everything that I've learned in this class, even some of it though I don't use for my particular job, it's still like I can go back to it, I can find it, I know how to do it. And it's because it's like core concrete skills that you're going to use. And that's what I love about it. It's practical. It's like, we're going to go test this. And then you have the outline, you can write the code, and the code's there. And the funny thing is, if I forget, or because oftentimes some little pieces you might forget, the code's there, you can review it, or you can Google foo.
Exactly.
That's the most powerful skill you'll learn, Google foo. Which, if you don't know what that is, that's basically like Googling the answers. And like, I got so good at that. And like people will ask me to Google and find answers for them.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the way.
That's the way. Because it's all there. You just have to absorb it, or find it. Know how to find it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And tell me that you can forget about our school now. Did you spend 5 months in? Actually, you spent 2 months and a half.
I didn't even finish all 5 months. So that just goes to show you, like, and I wanted to really talk about this because beforehand I was kind of thinking about what am I going to talk about, during the interview and all this. And I was thinking about the deciding factor of why I got the job. Because obviously the viewers don't know, but I actually missed the first round and I didn't get in, and other people got in. And the contractor or the recruiter guy, when they needed more people, he was like, well, why don't you think about interviewing Arthur again? And by this time I'd already completed the course, or not completed up until that point, half the course. In my head, I completed the course. But basically, like, we did a lot of interview prep and the Kahoots that we would do in class. And
love
those are like powerful, because when it came time, and I'd also studied, Alex would tell me, study questions that you see online, be prepared. So then when you come in, I answer those with confidence. And my manager, she was telling me that, one of the big deciding factors was you interviewed so well. And when I looked at my other coworkers, I looked them up on LinkedIn. I honestly, I stalk everybody on LinkedIn, but they had more experience, and it was granted, but like being able to interview and being able to show my knowledge, and I think being able to effectively communicate made the difference.
Yep. And Kahoot, first of all, it's fun. It's really fun it's a fun quiz game to see who's the smartest, who's the fastest here.
Yeah, that fast too. You get points for being fast. So it's like you have to know, which I like.
Yeah. That's my favorite game, especially for people who like challenges. I know not everyone does, but people who do like challenges, usually they're like, mostly guys, but a lot of girls as well. They're like, okay, I gotta answer this question the first because I want to get the most points.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you try to give the fastest answer, sometimes you push the wrong button.
I had that happen to me a lot. There's a lot of times where I was almost first and I didn't get it. But what I will say, what I loved about that was, like, in my perspective, it was fun, but it was nerve-wracking too, because it was tense and you had to be fast.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of that's exactly what an interview feels like.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Especially those first couple minutes, you're like kind of riled up, and they're asking to produce information on the spot. You got to be accurate. So I think the Kahoot was very helpful in that manner.
Yeah, for sure. And guys, if you want to roll back a couple of videos and see William, who took the Dev Bootcamp, didn't get a job, then signed up for our QA Bootcamp, and then he got a job, you can check it out, because Arthur and William were usually the first ones in Kahoot, and they got the jobs. Both of them got the jobs like halfway through the course, 2 months and a half, or maybe 3-4 months during the course.
I think that has a lot to do with it.
Oh yeah.
Like, if you press yourself for the Kahoot and know the answers well, I mean, yeah.
Yep, that's for sure.
Well, awesome. Congrats to him, by the way.
He's doing well. He's in Santa Barbara now, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
Full-time job. But he's working in the office, and you're working remote.
I'm working at home. Yeah, I don't have to leave my room, basically. I try to be healthy. But I have to, that's kind of one of the big perks is, like, the funny thing is our whole team, and like I've had previous jobs, my current job, I work from home. Previous jobs, I had to go to the office, and it's very inefficient. Especially when you're doing something like testing, that's the beauty of it, but I wouldn't say, like, there's still culture and we're still involved, and we kind of do like that whole hybrid thing where every couple weeks we'll meet up and we'll have lunch, and so it's nice to kind of get to know your coworkers as well. But I don't think I can go back to working in the office. Remote jobs all the way for sure. Yeah,
it's awesome. So tell us about the interview process. How did that go, by the way?
So with interview process, so I had kind of like a first round interview for my current position. I had a first round interview, and then I didn't pass that. A couple months later, then I was called again, and then I happened to get that interview. Then I had another interview where they were just kind of wanted me to, I guess, speak more with the rest of the team. It wasn't as like hitting me with questions, but yeah, they kind of liked what I had to say, and I kind of moved forward like that. Yeah, I think I was very fortunate. It took a while though. Like, I was, that's just the kind of the nature of it. I think in between my last position and this position, I think I was like searching for like 4 months.
Yeah.
And I think there's also the thing in the back of your mind where it's like you're getting an offer, but you want to get a good offer. You know what I mean? You don't want to like jump too soon. And then I and some people struggle where it's like there's some people that are like, I want everything, I deserve everything, you know. And there's also the like people that are a little more like too humble for their own good in a sense, you know, where they're kind of like, I should just take this job. It's a decent job. Why should I complain? And then you turn around and like, you know, and you got another job that's way better that I'm so much more happy now, you know, and then they're happier with me. I feel like I'm being more productive. So it's funny how like when you keep your blinders on, you know, and it's like, that's kind of like, I think with a lot of people, and now we're kind of looking for different ways of educating ourselves, Codemify being one of them. We're kind of looking for like different paths because the traditional paths might not be working. And I think nowadays that's evident.
Oh yeah, so true. Especially after quickly getting a job and changing your life and driving a bike and wanting to get a new bike.
yeah. It's definitely like, and I'm just thinking, okay, like maybe before it was like my eyes were limited to things. Now I was telling Sergey, like maybe I should do a dev course. You know, maybe I should push more in that direction. You know, you kind of start thinking once you get like a little momentum, I think you start looking at things bigger, you know, and like I think that's a beautiful thing about the class too. It's kind of, it shows you the possibilities and like you're kind of seeing people that have done it.
Yep.
You know, it's like, why can't I do it? There's no reason you can't do it. You know, you absolutely can if you're committed and you're driven and you want it. Nothing's stopping you.
Exactly. That's such a good motivational speech. And by the way, we are working on a dev course right now.
Okay. Well, you let me know.
I sure will.
I will sign up to that.
I sure. That is kind of on hold, but hopefully in about a month or 2 months that the first version will be ready and we're going to do the beta testing with our own ex-students who want to become software developers.
Nice.
We'll run it through them first and then we'll open up doors for everyone else in this world.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Sounds cool. Alrighty, now, so you've got the job. How did you change your life? What did you do before this, and how did you change your life?
So before I was kind of like, didn't really have much direction. Then this was kind of like the deciding factor that I was like, okay, I think I could do this. Before I was kind of, my other job wasn't really all that great. It was like kind of more like manual testing kind of thing, but it was okay. Before that, I was kind of just doing random jobs. So it was just kind of like, you know, so I think like a lack of direction would definitely kind of be drawn that way. And it wasn't because I wasn't capable or anything, but it was just kind of like, you know, I think for a lot of people, it's like kind of like you don't necessarily have a straight up plan. I did my college. I did what everyone says you're supposed to do. You go to school, you go to college, you get your degree, you know, and then the world opens up to you, right? That's not true. That is not true. Because what happens is you're looking in the market and I would look for my degree and then they're like, we want you to know this, this, and this. And I was like, I don't know any of this, you know? And it's kind of like, you don't have those hard skills, you know, where like with like what we learned in the class was like, okay, how to test, the reasons for testing, you know, the programs, the JavaScript, the coding languages, HTML, that stuff is like, okay, I know this. Yeah. You know, so those specific things is because like that's what companies are looking for now. Especially if you want like a tech job. And the beauty of that is it's always changing.
Exactly.
So it's like if you come in and there's some new software or something that comes out and you learn that, they're like, you know how to do this? Yeah. Okay, then come and do it.
Exactly. That's so true. That's so true. Now, for example, Playwright is slowly ramping up and you can see jobs are opening, but there are not many people who know Playwright. Yeah. Although there are only 7 or 10 positions on LinkedIn for the Playwright, but there are not 7 or 10 people who can do that. Yeah. Who know it. So if you learn Playwright, you could be one of those 10 who actually got it.
And I think on the other end too, it's like you should never feel like disheartened, like you might get left behind or anything, because it's like everything you've learned, a lot of them are very similar. Yeah. You know, you learn one and then you can build upon it. And then it's kind of like, okay, I understand the similarities here. It's not that different, you know. Exactly. They're not like reinventing the wheel or anything. Yeah. You know, it's got like probably the bulk of it. You'll probably know 80% of it. And then there's some new cool features to it. So.
Exactly. That's what I tell our students, that you will learn the basics here. You learn everything that you need to know in order to get the job. Yeah. And in the future, if you get the job, for example, you learn Python and Cypress with us, which are 2 most popular things in the world, or on the edge of being the most popular. And even if you get the job with Python or with some other language, there is no issue. You have the basics. you know the programming, you know at least one programming language, which means you can quickly adapt to the other one. I remember when I was getting my first 100K job, they asked me, hey, you know the JavaScript, but we are using actually .NET, C#.NET here.
Yeah.
Can you learn it? Can you use it? I was like, sure, no problem. Just give me a couple of weeks to adapt to a new language. But otherwise, it's like, for example, English, and you gotta understand Spanish. Like 20% of words are very similar or the same.
Yeah.
So you're already at the beginning of your educational process.
Yeah.
So there's no issue to adapt. Yeah, you jump into the nature. You jump into the environment where everyone speaks Spanish. Boom! In a couple of weeks, you can speak to a taxi driver. You can get a food easily. But with the programming languages, it's even much easier than that.
Yeah.
Because you know how to build functions. You know how to create objects.
It's far more similar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I think, and it's the cool thing too is like there's always more to learn, and I think kind of getting that mindset of like I'm gonna be a learner, not like it's not like a pass fail thing like, oh, I know this and I'm done, it's kind of like it's like driving a car, you can just get better and better at driving a car. You got a sport driver, go around the track, something like that. But for me, it feels great in the sense of like I feel like very satisfied when I feel like I'm learning and I'm moving forward, like as we've touched upon before. And I think this is a field that like you can do that, and there's so many different avenues to go. And you never really stop. Like, and I said, like I was telling you, like for my current job, I have, it pays me very well, but I don't really do a lot of coding. So that's another thing. Maybe you're not crazy about coding or this or that, but there's other elements to do. And like even in our own IT department, I'm a contractor, but for the people that work in those positions, there's people that don't code at all. And you'd be surprised at like the paychecks that they bring in, and a lot of it. There's project managers. There's a bunch of people. So I think an interesting thing is like I remember who was it? I think Alex was saying like as long as you get your foot in the door, as long as you get your foot in the door and they can tell you're doing a good job, you're motivated, you can always go different directions.
Yeah, exactly. And one of my exes, she actually is a QA manager now. I pushed her myself to become a QA engineer because she didn't know what she wanted to do. Yeah. And she never done a lot of coding. She's never done any coding actually. She only played with the database. You can say she coded with SQL,
like some SQL and stuff.
Yeah. Then some API testing, but she makes more than 200K now, and she never done coding.
What?
Think about that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, the thing is, as you said, there are so many doors open. You just gotta step in. As Alex mentioned, hey Alex, by the way, you're cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, you just gotta step in, and then you can choose your door. Because I've been, by the end of my career, I've been doing DevOps work. I've been building some DevOps things that DevOps have not built before in my company. First, I was asking them questions, and then they were like, dude, you've learned more than we know now. I don't know what to tell you. Just go Google it or find an answer on your own. I have no idea how to do that. And by the end of the day, I would spend time, I would stay up until 2 a.m. because I was just on fire to learn it because no one else knew it in my company. I was pretty much the smartest guy in this particular piece of object, and it kept the fire for a while. I spent 3 years in a company. I've built so many new things. Everyone was very thankful, and I've got big raise.
Well, what's that quote they say? Like diamonds are made under pressure. I think that's something for me too that really helped was like even in college I was always kind of like pushing things off, procrastinator. The beauty of this course is it's one big procrastination session. You're cramming all the time, and you learn a lot. But I think too it was like I forgot it was like Andrew Huberman or someone saying that like as you get older, like your brain's not as neuroplastic as when you were a child. Yeah. But they're saying that one way that you can take a lot of information and then you learn it is when you're under stress.
So true.
So I think it was like kind of like that panic state you get into. And like, it's very similar in the class. I guess panic is probably not the best word for it, but you're kind of like this intense kind of like, I need to learn this now. Yeah. Stressed kind of, in a good stress kind of environment. But it was kind of like the same thing that I told you, like I was at the class during when we were learning, was the same when I started my job. Because you're in like this new environment. You don't know anything. And you need to take all this information in. They had me watching videos. I'm looking at older tickets, things like that. And you're just like taking it in. And I remember this specific position I have now, within like 2 or 3 weeks, they're like, wow, Art, you really like onboarded really quickly. Like you kind of picked everything up. And I think a lot of that had to do with the class. And it's like kind of like, especially with QA stuff, it's like you'll have moments where it's quiet. and then it'll get crazy.
Yep.
It's almost like catching fish. Like you're just sitting there doing nothing, and then you get something on the line, and you're like, you're getting real crazy. But I think I like that, and I think that's kind of one of the things that the class prepares you for, because it's like you're used to that stress when you need to, because the whole class is stressful, But
it's not too stressful.
Not too stressful.
It is stressful.
I guess like you push yourself, and I think that's one of the things is like every week you got things to do, and you have a very timeline. I think for me too, that's one of the things that I struggle with kind of on my own is like when I'm learning things on my own is that I kind of won't go fast enough, or I'll forget about it, or I'll get distracted, or I have this or that. The class gives you just enough direction. But still presses you to kind of get everything done. So you're learning very quickly, but you always have guidance. So you're never just like lost on your own,
Exactly. Yeah. And one of the biggest things that you can always ask questions in a Slack directly. Alex will give you an answer. I will give an answer. Far video of whom you can find right here. He's a really cool guy, by the way. He was not a mentor with you, but we just hired him.
Nice.
He's our student from the group number 5 from back 3-4 years ago.
One of the OGs.
Yeah. Super cool guy. I love him.
I think, that's one of the problems with kind of like learning stuff on your own is that sometimes, especially when you get deep into it, there's like a very like niche question that you might have, and there's nowhere to really look for it. And that's kind of one of the things of like when you go into a position, like they'll be asking you things and you have to like know the subject, but you haven't worked the subject necessarily. And the problem with that is like you don't know how certain things work. But when you're learning outside and then you come into the classroom and there's someone telling you like real world experience, that kind of gives you a way better kind of view of it. So that when you go into it, you're not like you don't accidentally look more green than you should.
Exactly. And an experience that we're providing now, we have 2 different startups for the manual group and for the automation group. So when you sign up for the course, first you go through one startup, you learn their release process, you learn how things works with them. Then we have a completely different startup that has a mobile testing, that has a web testing, has an API testing, has everything you could possibly imagine except a desktop testing, but they're not big market on it anyways. So you get multiple experiences, but you almost didn't even taste the second one because you already got a job.
Alex and Sergey did too good a job with me.
That's too much advertisement, guys. Don't listen to him.
Shameless plugs. I think definitely though, like I didn't get to do that. But I would tell everyone in the class, you guys need to just drill those Kahoots, drill those interviews. And I think our class, actually, if I remember correctly, they didn't take advantage of the interviews as much as they should have.
They did.
And I think that was a problem.
Yeah.
And I think maybe like long term, like I think those things are probably the most important. If for my experience.
So true. Nowadays, I don't only interview people on a weekly basis, twice per week. I separate some time during the webinar so I could ask them questions.
Yeah.
But also what I do now, which is very helpful for test automation engineers, is I ask them to read the code.
Oh, yeah.
Because people, usually they can write the code, but they cannot read it. When I ask them, usually I hear, number one, some non-technical words. They should remember that what is parameter, what is argument, what's the difference between 2 of them, and what is the difference between function and a method. But they're like, oh, this is function. Oh, what is the difference between function and method? Aren't they the same? Well, they kind of are, but...
There's also the other end of it where you have someone that might be like super technical.
Yeah.
And they're breaking it down. They're like, oh, I did a for loop, did this, and then they're like, but what does that mean to business people? Because they're not always working with coders. So a lot of these people don't even know what a loop is, and they're asking you to explain it to them. So you kind of have to have those soft skills too. And I think this is a good opportunity for people that like, if you're able to, when you're learning the material, one of the things I really like to do is like, I would talk to it as if I was like teaching a class. And I would be like, okay, so this is what a loop is. And I talk through my code, or I just kind of talk through my study points for like interview questions. Mm-hmm. So I just be in my room. I call it like monologues. That's what I do. I was like, I'm doing a monologue. My sister's like, are you talking to yourself again, Arthur? Do we need to take you to the hospital or something? I was like, I'm practicing. This is a monologue. You're not invited. So, but I think like, cause then it's like, cause you just read it on a paper, but like when you're not talking the words, think about it too, from a learning perspective. You're speaking the words, you're hearing the words, and then you're thinking about what should I say, and then you're doing it. And so I think it's much easier to learn that way.
It's the
remember
best.
it. Yeah.
I so agree with you. That's the way I've learned English. You know, back
It helps to talk English if you want to speak English.
Exactly.
Mind
back in North Dakota in 2010,
Yeah.
or 2009 or probably 2010, 2011, I was working on a farm with a lot of Ukrainians, and everyone spoke Ukrainian with each other. But I was like, that's not the way to learn English. So I've switched to English until the weekend. I was only allowed for myself to speak Ukrainian during the weekends, Saturday and Sunday.
Wow.
That's it. And all the Ukrainians, they were mad at me.
But who would you talk to though?
To all of the Americans and to them.
So you had some Americans there too.
Yeah. But
okay.
Yeah, but only our boss and a couple of other people. But mostly we would work with Ukrainians, and I would speak English with Ukrainians. They would answer me in Ukrainian. I was like, I don't care. I'm gonna talk to you in English.
Yeah.
I don't care that you're gonna get mad at me. It doesn't really matter now. It's gonna matter in the future. And also, when I would drive a tractor all day long, I would be bored. But I wanted to be smart and a cool guy,
Yeah.
And what was the way? Well, number one, I started listening audio stories. Then I started repeating myself after the guy says the sentence. I would repeat the sentence.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, I was singing Eminem in a tractor in North Dakota.
Yeah, there you go.
That was the best to get rid of. I still couldn't get rid of 100% of my accent, but still, I could get as close I could possibly.
But I feel like you speak English like super comfortably.
Yeah, and I think Eminem did help me a lot.
Give you the confidence.
So true. And my girlfriend now, she's a singer. Whenever we were talking about my English and accent, I would start reading Eminem right away.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I know how to do that. I think repetition is like that's like the big element of it. Just repetition. And then I think one of the hardest things too, and I think this is something that will destroy people in the interviews, is that like kind of that like in your voice, that little crackle, like lack of confidence, and it's hard to fake that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's something that like if someone has confidence and they give an answer and they tell it right, it's like they're like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Oh,
you know? But then if you kind of like walk in there, you might know the right answers, but you're like, well, that's kind of when I did my first interview for this one. I was like, well, kind of shaky, or my bad habit is I talk too fast. You'll know your bad habit. This is one thing I didn't do that maybe would be great for you guys to try. Record yourself. See what you look like when you're talking. I mean, if I recorded myself, I'll probably look like an idiot. But then you'll learn how to not look like an idiot. But it's kind of like, but then just getting comfortable with that, I think would be super helpful. Because then you can kind of see, because the interesting thing is they want to make sure you're not cheating during the interview. So they're recording you. You're looking live. And I remember I was telling you this for this position. For other positions, it's been different. But for this position, I was looking at black screens.
Yep.
And I was like, what's going on? And then I turned mine off, instinctively. I was like, oh, we're not sharing our screens. They're like, no, turn it back on. And I was like, oh, wow. And it kind of threw me off for a second, But they want to make sure that you're not like looking at a prompt or like reading things from different places. You know what I mean?
But their cameras were off.
Their cameras were off. My camera was on. They're watching me, and they want to make sure that you're kind of like not looking around when you're answering questions and things like that, because then they're like, oh, this guy's like reading his information or something like that, So it's kind of like you have to look dead in the camera and you have to be confident in what you're saying. And I was like, what's going on here? But I was thinking about it. I was like, maybe, and I was like, you know what? On their part, it's a very smart move if you think about it. Because usually when someone's looking at you and you're saying an answer and they're smiling, you're getting positive feedback.
Yeah.
So you can get information. So they're keeping you completely blind. But then you have to be even more confident in what you're saying. So at first, I know what you're saying. This seems disrespectful. They're not even showing you on the camera. Like they can't see my face. But then I was thinking, you know what? On their end, it might also be the reason why I got the jump. Because I was still smiling. I was like, I'll smile at the black screen. I'll tell you all the answers you want to know. And it worked out. But I think that's probably why they went with that tactic.
Whoa, that's so interesting to think about it from the other perspective.
Yeah.
Because I would be like, come on, guys, what's going on? Why do you keep your cameras off and I should keep mine on? That's disrespectful. I'm going to keep my camera off too. I don't care what you say. I
didn't want to piss anyone off. And the funny thing is I've met all these people now. I know them and they're great people. They're super nice. I think that gives you you even have to be more, on point with how you're perceived. You got to look into the camera, be confident. And I think recording yourself, like we mentioned before, is a good way to do that.
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
impressive. Actually, we did implement it. So
nice.
now once in a while we do. Actually, we gotta make a good habit of asking people to send us videos on a weekly basis.
Mhm.
That'll be the best. Alex, if you're watching this video starting from next Monday, we are going to be asking every single student of ours to record a video and send it to us on a weekly basis. All right, now let's talk about election stuff. If you can tell us, so you are testing election software.
That's correct. So basically, I work for, I won't say the county, but a very large county.
Trump?
And
Trump County?
The cool thing is, if everything works out, I think they're going to implement this into a lot of different counties. Basically, what it does is, you kind of have old systems that have been around for 20, 30 years, and now they're kind of looking into like revamping these. So they're developing new, basically, software for this stuff, and I have the joy of testing it.
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, like, you don't think about it, I guess, on a day to day, but how many different lives and how many different people this is going to impact. I mean, in a lot of elections, especially nowadays, everyone's very crazy about elections. And
Yeah, based on the election results, which you are directly kind of impacting because you're testing software. And if you leave a bug there, if you leave a security bug, if Trump calls you and asks you, hey, can you leave a security bug for us so we could vote some extra?
yeah. So there's like so many different things that have to happen, security issues, and then there's functionalities. The crazy thing is like these organizations, they've had to do so many workarounds because their system is so old. It hasn't. I don't even think they kind of really understood like how far things are going to go with technology and all that. So a lot of these things, and props to the people that work in these counties, like they like push themselves and they find creative solutions. But these are solutions that kind of like, they don't want to do anymore, or they shouldn't be doing. Should be automated. They should have the system doing it. So it's kind of making sure. A lot of my job is kind of like making sure it works properly. I try to break things.
Nice.
So that's a big part of it. Like I was like, if this is like, if I'll get like a space to enter some information, I'm putting in random numbers, and you'll learn this in the class, trying to break it every way possible, putting random things. And I think that's kind of the fun part of it, is trying to break that. So that's a cool thing.
Whoa, that's impressive.
We don't get to build things very often, but we get to break them.
Let's go. Tester's life.
Tester's life. There you go.
I'm going to take a moment while he's drinking water and remind you guys to hit the like button below if you are enjoying this amazing video with this fella. Because honestly, it is one of the best videos we've had so far, because he inspires so many people. He is pretty much an inspirational machine, I could tell.
You're being way too kind.
Oh, come on, man.
But I think, part of it is just kind of like, I feel like I've been given such a great opportunity, and I feel so blessed. Thank you to you and everyone on the team. And, I just hope that other people, if they're wondering about this, that they can pursue that. And it's definitely life-changing,
Yeah.
And I think coming from other jobs where you're not kind of like respected or appreciated, or your skills are just kind of wasted, being in an environment where you can push yourself and learn more, and people see that and they give you credit for it, I think is awesome. And I think it's a great feeling.
Oh, yeah.
So, sign up for the class.
Killed it. All right, then I'm going to ask you just a couple more questions, actually, for people who possibly are still thinking, or maybe sign up for the upper course and they're not sure if they want to change something, if they should proceed, if they should roll back and ask for a refund. What's your advice? What would you actually change if you would start again?
If I started again, I think I would. I think I was working a little bit of it, and I remember there was a point where I wasn't really working, or I wasn't really doing like a part-time thing that I had, just devoting myself completely, which is scary. And I think for a lot of people, especially the people that were working at the same time, it almost takes away from the experience. Which is hard to tell someone don't work, but if you, like, I had the opportunity, I was living at home with my family, and it sucked, and I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't enjoy that necessarily, but not having a job, you can't really go out, you can't do, so I kind of pulled everything back at one point, but I think that's when I got the most from the class, like complete commitment. And I think even if you are working, that's not a problem. But I feel like don't hang out with your friends. Don't go out. Don't do anything. Just live and breathe that for a while. And honestly, think about this. 3 to 5 months in the grand scheme of your life is nothing. You know what I mean? It's literally like, it's very short, it's very quick, but if you really commit yourself, it's very life-changing, and you'd be amazed at how much it can change, you know? And I was like, compared to where I was at that point to where I am now, in a very short amount of time, because you're so focused, you know? And I think that's kind of what makes it possible. And I think telling yourself, like, you don't want to be one of those people where you're telling yourself, oh yeah, I'm taking this class, I'm studying, but then you're on your phone, you're on your this. Like, when you need to really push yourself. And I think the more you push and the more you stay focused, and, you know, I'm a person that kind of struggles with focusing sometimes. I'll get distracted, do this. But I think keep practicing that muscle, keep pushing yourself, even if you've kind of been out of school for a while. If you keep kind of stretching that muscle, working it out, you're going to notice by the end of the class. I think when I started, I couldn't really study all for very long periods of time. Mm-hmm. But as the class progressed, sometimes I had to like be like, oh yeah, I should probably go to sleep now. Like, it's about that time, you know? And I think it's, and I think one of the beautiful things about, like, I think coding and like doing QA and stuff like that is kind of like, you have these moments where you kind of get stuck on a problem.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is going on? You know, and you're sitting there and you're so frustrated. You know, if I could go back, I would tell myself that these are the best moments in the class. These moments where you're stuck, because these are kind of your defining moments, you know, where you're like, no matter what, I'm going to figure out this problem. And I think for me, it's like, so if you're taking the class and I had to retake it and do all that, I would tell myself, every time you get stuck in a moment, this is kind of like, this is your defining moment, you know, to show who you are. And I learned the most. And those problems where you're stuck on them, you actually learn so much more than something that just comes easy to you. So I would say focus on the hard problems. Don't give up. Keep pushing through them. And I would say do even harder problems. Like, some of the stuff we learned in class, because I had kind of learned ahead of time.
Yeah.
Was kind of familiar with. And I think Alex was really, really helpful with this too. He'd send me harder problems. He's like, oh, you did these? All right, try these, you know? So I think kind of pushing all those things, studying more, being more focused. I'm trying to think. I would probably I would go to more interviews. Yeah. Do more interviews. The Kahoots, you're kind of forced to do. So keep doing those. With the Kahoots, I'll give you guys a trick. If you're taking the class, don't rush. Be fast. But you know, there's like this Navy SEAL thing they say, be smooth. Yeah. Don't be fast, be smooth. So like, think about it and then click. Don't just like frantically try to do it, you know? And I think that'll help you. And I think when you're answering questions, when people are telling you to, there's like this misconception that you have to like just start like firing off right away. And that's not true. You can sit there and like take a question in and, you know, and then you answer the question. Yeah. And then for interview, and they won't like dock you or anything like that. And I think the silence is almost like, I'm the type of person, as you can tell, I like to talk. And I talk too much, too fast. And I think kind of slowing it down and talking more deliberately, it almost like adds more meaning to the words, you know?
So true.
So that's another thing I would say, kind of like focus on, I would do the videos, record myself, try to sound as natural, as confident as possible, study more of those questions and kind of analyze those, break those down. Because at the end of the day, it's kind of like, I remember Alex told me this really important thing, like the first interview I did, he was like, you sound like a robot. You know, basically, that's basically what he told me. He's like, you sound like a robot, you're just firing off things. And it's like, he's like, you're talking to people. And I think that's an important thing to remember. It's like you're talking to people and people like to be around people that they like to be around, you know? So kind of being friendly, being nice, being kind, you know, a little joke here and there, you know? I forgot, there was like one question where they asked me, they're like, oh, like if you had a hard problem, like how did you know how to prioritize your time? And then I like cracked some joke where I was like, oh, I wouldn't sleep. I just wouldn't sleep. I drink a Red Bull, I'd get it done. And they thought that was hilarious, you know? So I think realizing that kind of you're talking to people and kind of building that rapport, you know, because that's something you don't realize. You're not there to just answer questions. They're kind of figuring out, do I want to work with this person, you know? So kind of getting to know them and like understanding it's more of a conversation. I think that's what Alex was saying. Think about it as more of a conversation as opposed to I'm taking a test.
Exactly.
You know?
It's not an exam in a school.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think because that's all we've been doing, for me, for a long time, multiple choice all through grade school, you're just taking tests, right, wrong. And then the reality is kind of like, even at work, like we talked about this, there's going to be questions you don't know the answer to. You didn't know that DevOps stuff, but if you show them that you're a capable person and you're able to learn and adapt, especially in an environment like QA or tech where everything's changing. I don't want someone that has all the answers now. What about tomorrow?
Exactly.
Maybe you don't have the answers tomorrow and you can't learn, or you're not flexible, or, then how does that work? It doesn't.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I want people to learn from our course is the ability to learn fast on your own. So we give you the basics. We pretty much push everything into you, and based on all the information that you get, based on all of the challenges you get, I expect people to be able to learn things quickly in the future, because Cypress, but then you switch to Playwright, and then you're gonna have to Google things. You're gonna have to go to official documentation, take a look how it works, copy paste it, edit it, make sure you can run that code. That's as easy as it gets for the when you become a senior engineer, that's why you become a senior engineer, because you can quickly find information, you can digest it, you can edit it, you can make it work. When a mid-level or a junior level, you copy paste, it doesn't work, I've got a problem, I'm stuck. When you become more senior, like, okay, easy, let me find it. If I haven't done it now, give me 5 minutes, I'll find info, I'll make it work.
Yeah.
Super easy. And I think to add a couple of words to what you said, I think everything that Arthur just described is discipline. Is a definition of discipline. When you do what you don't want to do in order to get what you want to get.
Yeah. And I think if I could go back in time, I think one of the things I would do too is I would kind of look up more studying strategies, because it's like how to study effectively, Yeah. Because if you're just like staring at things and you're reading it and stuff, it's very difficult to kind of just memorize everything. And I would suggest people don't try to memorize this course. Try to understand it as much as possible. And there's like cool, like, I don't know, I've watched a bunch of Huberman Lab and stuff like that. And they say sometimes studying for like 15, 20 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute pause, where you're just sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently that helps with learning,
Yep.
So doing things like that, and just kind of like the coding stuff is kind of nice because you can just keep doing it. But I would say volume, discipline for sure. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, you also kind of have to remind yourself, like, why are you doing this? And I think the more you remind yourself of why you're doing it, and the bigger why you have, like, I want to change my life. This sucks. You're like, you're looking around and you're like, I don't want this anymore. I think those people probably do the best because they're willing to just drive themselves, like, push themselves all the way through. There's probably smart ways to go about it. But I think at the end of the day, you can't forget that underlying principle of like, where do you want to go? This can change your life, but it's not going to just happen. You really have to, like, you have a good opportunity, but you have to push, and you got to push hard. And you guys give all the tools you need. You know what I mean? And you just kind of have to, I think that's kind of the deciding factor too, between the people that kind of make it and they find something and those that don't, is like, it's kind of on the individual,
Yeah.
Like, you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. You ever heard
that describes pretty much our course, because if you guys come to course, you pay us money, we will not teach you if you will not learn. We give you everything you need to have in order to get the job, in order to learn, become a QA engineer with experience, get the job. But if you don't have a will, there is no way I will make you want to study. Because it's up to you if you want to change your life or if you're not.
And I think one thing I did that might be helpful is I remember we used to like go hang out and stuff with my friends, and like even before I started the course, I was telling people, I'm a QA engineer. Like, even though I wasn't, but that's what I wanted to be. But like, you get that in your mind, and then you start doing, this is a good practice that I think is helpful. You should try this. When you go and see things in your environment, even in your kitchen or your house or out on the street, think about, how would you test this? In your day-to-day life. So even when you have to go to work, you have to take the car, you're driving, you're like, all right, how would I test the car? How would I do this? And oddly enough, they kind of ask you at interview questions sometimes, questions like that. But like, getting that tester mindset, I think would be helpful too.
An amazing advice. I'm going to attach video right here to the guy who asked his kid to make a peanut butter sandwich. I think you saw that video.
Oh yeah, that one is so good.
You're gonna love it.
I think like it kind of makes you really break down how you're looking at things,
As a tester, as a
tester,
engineer.
you have to like, as an engineer, you kind of have to look at things like that, and everything's got to be like boom, boom, boom. And like, even now when I write my test cases, it's like, it's like almost like you got to make it like idiot proof.
Yeah.
Not that anyone testing it is like that, but you know what I'm saying is like you have to be very descriptive. You're clicking this, you're doing this, you're doing that.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I've seen that when I'm not as like, maybe I'm saying, oh, just, log in or do this or do that. And I'm not as clear on my steps. It leads to confusion down the road, because down the road, this is another thing too, is you're looking at something you probably haven't looked at in a couple months. Did you leave good notes for yourself? Did you describe what you were doing? Because now you're like, when you did it, it was so easy. Now you kind of lose the context. So I think that's another thing too, for the course and for work as well, is keep notes of things. You're looking at this thing, maybe a comment, or maybe if you're trying to test something and you'd write the test cases for like a paper clip or a car or something like that. Keeping your own notes on things is also very helpful and will help you remember down the line.
Oh yeah, as they said, an old piece of paper is better than any brains in this world.
Yeah.
Because you can write things down. Brain can forget things. Paper cannot.
And that's kind of the beauty, is because you have everything on your laptop. You have your code, you have your notes, you have everything. You just have to be able to utilize it. And I see this a lot. It's like the Google Foo thing too. The answers are out there, but can you find them? And oftentimes it's like the difference is like I might not know how to solve this, but I was like, wait, I think I remember this one thing about it. So I'm able to add like that extra word in the phrase or something when I'm searching for something, and it'll bring me back to that old Stack Overflow thing that I looked at like months ago that is now useful again,
Yep.
So it's kind of like that ability too, is like just being able to pull information is super helpful. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Guys, this was honestly one of the best interviews we've had so far. And on this good note, I want to remind you guys to hit that like button again, to subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions about the courses or how to become a QA engineer, feel free to reach out to us. I'm going to leave a link right below this video. Thank you for coming over. And
thank you, Sergey.
You guys have an amazing day.
That was awesome. That was so much fun.
Yeah, you're a good speaker, brother. You're a good speaker.
Well, I talk a lot.
Yeah, that's good. You're that professional. That's the thing.